Hello, and thank you for joining me on my first YouTube tutorial video. What I wanted to do today is to recreate the very first painting in acrylic that I ever did at home. Before that first painting, I had taken 2 paint night classes with my daughters and fell in love with it. So I went to Hobby Lobby and I bought the Liquitex Basic Starter Set, which has, I've used up all my white and another one, but white titanium. Now I'm on to the big tub. And Mars Black, Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue, Ultramarine Blue, and Phthalo Green. For this project, we will only be needing the ultramarine blue, black, and white. So I'm going to set those 2 aside. So while I was at Hobby Lobby, I also picked up one of their basic sets. This isn't all of them, and as you see, some of them are in great disrepair. I had a huge learning curve on how to take care of my brushes, and usually was by learning how not to take care of my brushes. So there were a few more in this original set, but for this particular painting, I'm pretty sure I'm going to use this flat, an 8 flat, and I might use the fan brush. This is a size 4, and possibly the round 8, and we'll see if I can get by with just using those. It's also good to have a basic pencil. Everyone has those at home. And this is a set of Dollar Tree paint knives. There's a different one that comes with it. I just grabbed what I had left. And these are for mixing your paints. So the next thing is your canvas. And this is also from Dollar Tree. It's also good to have water. I just use some plastic cups, or you can use mason jars, or you can get one of those fancy paint things, and it's always great to have paper towels ready to use. And that is the setup that we need for this video, except I don't have any way to mix my paint. This is a Dollar Tree palette. You can also use a paper plate or a styrofoam plate, just anything so that you can blend your colors. Forgot to take this off while we were out. So while I'm taking this off, I'm going to talk to you about maintaining your brushes. Never leave your brushes soaking in the water. That will cause damage to the handle of your brush. See, like that. So if you leave your brush sitting in water for even just a little bit, especially, but overnight will kill it. It soaks into here. It can also loosen the glue inside, which holds the brushes on, and it can also loosen this part of the brush. See, this one freeze. Another problem with this is once it starts doing this, when the paint cracks off, it drops onto your paint, and that is exceedingly frustrating. So never leave them in your paintbrush. Rinse them off, dry them with your paper towel, and lay them aside. I like to lay them in a special place so that I know that I've used it, so that I will take time later to wash them with some soap and water. That's basic care of brushes. Another thing to do is never leave them in a cup like this, because it'll damage the end. That's another thing, leaving it in water. It puts pressure on the brushes, the bristles, and eventually it'll cause some fraying like that. So also, that can also be caused by not getting all the paint out of your brush when you're cleaning them. So the reason I have two waters is one is for the dirty brush and one is for just trying to get water to thin your paint. All acrylics are water-based, and so they can be thinned with water, but you never want to thin it with more than about 50% water, or you begin to have a breakdown and you might have peeling. There are other ways to thin your paint more if you want to do more of a really thin coat, but I'll deal with that in later videos. So for this video, we are going to be basically doing a night scene. It could be day, but I think it looks more night, with a moon and then shades of blue out to black on the outside. And then we're going to have some silhouettes of some flowers at the bottom. I will try to create a link to this photo, this picture, when I'm done, so you can have that as a reference photo. So the first thing I want to do is get a little bit of white out on my palette, quite a bit of blue, and some black, but not very much black, because a little black goes a long ways. This is one of the problems of getting to the end of your tube. Oh, another little trick is when you get really low, like even lower than this, is to cut this tube in about half and then go in with your palette knives and scrape the paint out. And you can get these little paint things at the Dollar Tree, and you can put that leftover paint in there and it keeps it nice for a long time, so you don't waste the paint inside the tube. Oh, you might have noticed that I put this little tape on here. It says titanium white. And that's because when I have them all in my case, that doesn't say anything about the color up here. By the way, I never spend that much. I always wait till they have a coupon for half off one item and run in. I don't live very close, so I only can do that when I'm actually in town for something else. But I do that so I can see what color they are when they're in the box that I keep them in at my desk, because it only says what color they're at the bottom, and the complete black at the top doesn't really give you, I mean, you can kind of see the yellow through that, but it is not distinct, especially if I'm looking for a particular color. And you might have noticed that I have the bottom of this taped. I did that because when you open them this way, you tend to get all this paint all over, and I feel like it's a waste of paint. It's a mess. It can drop stuff off on your surface. So I prefer to tape them down and then take them off this way. Some of the newer bottles don't even let you do that, so I'm kind of frustrated with that, but oh well. So I'm going to take a little tiny bit of black. Oops, goes out fast. And then my ultramarine blue. And if you're new to art in general, ultramarine blue would definitely make you think that it is a greenish blue, when in fact it is a purplish blue. So generally speaking, when you're mixing paints, you want to use a palette knife, because when you use a brush, here's another little tip to do your mixing, it can push the paint way up into the base, which I didn't know early on. But if you're just mixing up a tiny bit and you don't like shove your whole brush into the paint, you're probably fine. So I'm going to take some of this, a little bit of this blue, and put it over here. Another thing nice is with the palette knives is it doesn't mix colors in your base. Like, I don't want to put blue into my white. So what I'm trying to create here is a gradient of the blue, and I'm hoping that this kind of shows you that this is really a lavender blue. And look at that, I've crushed all the paint right up to the top. That is not a green blue, not at all. So just keep in mind, ultramarine blue does not mean that it is like green. It is definitely a blue to the red. I think that's called warm tones, you know, because blue plus red makes purple. So this is blue with just a hint of red. If you want to have a greenish blue, then you want the phthalo blue. Like, this is phthalo green. I don't know what phthalo is, but I know that phthalo green is a blue green and phthalo blue is a green blue. Does that make sense? Okay, so I have mixed a light blue, I'm going to mix a slightly stronger blue, like halfway between these two. I'll probably need more of this later, but I don't want to go over. I tend to be one that uses less paint, not more. So, because I hate to waste it at the end, and I end up with all these hundreds of little paint containers that I just don't readily use. So I like to paint with less. The only time that kind of bites you is when you have to mix more and you can't get the exact shade. So I've got white, I've got light blue, I've got a medium blue, I've got a dark blue, and I've got a black. And the rest, though, I'll blend on the surface. So these are very thirsty canvases and they're not primed. So I like to get them a little wet before we start. It helps to keep the, I should have a really big brush for this. Actually, I do. I'm going to steal my watercolor brush, which I'm going to use later, but just to make this go faster in the video. You can also take a little spray bottle and spray your water on here to give it just a really light coating. And that's probably a better idea, but I didn't bring my, I want to keep this simple. So you could probably even just put this on by hand. I know there's some videos out there where people are actually like finger painting with acrylics. Just know that don't do anything with cadmium, because cadmium is toxic, I believe, to humans. So as you can see, it's just, oh, got a few wet, dry spots, and it won't stay wet like this. You know, by moving it around in the light, you can see what areas are still. Oh, and if you have a regular canvas, like on a frame, you can spray the back of your canvas. And a nice little trick to spraying the back of your canvas is, if it's loose or it's dented, spraying the back of your canvas can tighten it up. But this is just a canvas board. So I have a wet surface. I am now going to begin by making the moon. And I really recommend taking something about the size of what you want to get circles, because circles are pretty much impossible. So I'm going to very, very lightly draw. Thankfully with acrylic paints, the white is opaque, which means it's not see-through. So, because sometimes graphite can be picked up into your paint and show. So inside this circle, I don't know how we get so much dust and things on. So I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to get it wet. And this is not a very happy brush, but this is, it's a flat, but I think there's a name for those kind of stiff brushes. So I'm going to start with just white inside. I get quite a big chunk because I want it to be really nice to work with. And just fill in your circle. It doesn't even have to be perfect, because this is what's called surrealism. It's not accurate to any photo. It's not going to look like a moon. Now your brush strokes will stick around quite a bit. So I don't have a filbert. I don't have one here. A filbert brush is one that has like a rounded tip. So it's nicer to not have such a flat edge, but these kind of brushes are nice for getting a lot of paint on your canvas quickly. So I'm going to set this over here and maybe try this round and see if, now these are very used and not the greatest. And I'm using my paper towel here to get a little bit of the water off, so I don't have really thin paint. The more water you have, the thinner your paint is. So what I'm going to try to do is just make this not big swashes of brush strokes. And once I'm somewhat happy with how the brush strokes, and we can come back in after it dries and do a second coat if it just seems a little bit too thin. Okay, so now I'm going to leave a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm going to pick up this light blue, and I'm going to make a ring around my moon. And I probably should have mixed more of that, but we won't use very much of this light blue. So we'll just kind of brush it right out of my brush. It's not the best way to use a round brush, but there it is. I'm going to actually take a little bit of white and just kind of dab this around just to get the paint where I want it, so that this moon has a little bit of a glow around it. And believe me, my moon will not end up round because it gets smaller and smaller. So keep that in mind when you find your your roundish object that you probably want it a little bigger than you want your moon to turn out to be. So I'm just using round strokes to kind of get a blend. I don't want to smooth it out completely. So now I'm going to go into the next color, which is this medium blue that I created, and apply that in a circle around. And when you're blending, water is your friend. Water makes paint, acrylic paint, happy. Don't want to do it with oils. Never done oils, but I'm pretty sure that you don't want to do water with oil paint. So add a little water here, and I'm going to go in and just do some swoopy. Do you like sound effects? I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'm all new to this. Now, you can kind of see that this is quite a dramatic change from that light blue to the dark blue. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and get my brush a little bit wet again and do some, as you start the light and you work your way out into the darker blue, and it will draw the lighter color. It's kind of picking up. Get a little more. I'm totally messing up my white there, but I'm not going to use it for anything but blue here, so you have to be more careful if you're doing multiple colors in one painting. Another thing that this painting is going to be called is a monochromatic painting. So technically, you could get by with going down to Hobby Lobby and buying phthalo blue, white, and black. Black isn't even necessary. I think we might be able to do this without black. I mean, you could. It just won't give the night effect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now show you how to clean the brush. So you take the, oh, well, this is now my dirty water. We'll pretend that I always use this. Swish it around. I always like to, before I go in the clean water, I'm going to do the same with this because I'm done with white. Swish it in your water and use a towel to get, you can even do this before you put it in the water for the first time, and then do it again because more paint will come off. And then hopefully when I go into this water, very little paint is left. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside to remind myself that I used this paintbrush for this project, and it's mostly clean. So you can also tell if you got most of the paint off if the paintbrush comes away clean. Okay, so now I'm going to take what's left in here and add it around. And I think I'm going to mix a little more of that color, which was like half and half, and I totally messed that up, but that's okay because I can always get more blue. Okay. Ooh, got a little crazy there. Don't want to be crazy. Well, that actually came out about the same as the original. Started out a little darker. That's okay, because darker is what we're going for. So I'm just using broad, round strokes. And this is that brush that's dying. And you can totally turn your artwork so that you can work with how your hand works best. Okay, so now I think I'm ready for the blue. How exciting, pure blue. Actually, it's not pure because I got a little white in it, if you noticed. I was being a bad girl. And so I'm going to work that in, and we might get some more out of the tube. Okay. And the idea is just to so that your color slowly gets darker. That's the idea here, because the closer to that moon, the brighter the sky would be, the farther away, the darker the sky would be. At least in my world. I don't know about your world. So we are almost ready. I think we actually need to go with some more just plain blue. Another nice little tip I'm going to give you is to paint the edges, especially with these canvas boards. Because if you put them on the wall without a frame, that edge shows. And if you don't want to frame it, well, then you need the edges to be looking nice. So it's kind of a good thing to keep that in mind throughout your painting, but especially once you actually get to the edge, that your edge reflects your paint that's on the front. So it's a smooth transition. And you can do this on, oh, that did not turn out round. That was a bad idea. Nice thing with acrylics is they don't dry super fast. They dry faster than oil. The more water you have and the wetter your canvas, the slower it dries. And you'll find as you work with acrylics, I'm going to turn this over to the side here. I'm a lefty, in case no one noticed, I'm a lefty. And I'm going to work my way down to the, what will be the bottom. So, get some of that good stuff there. Now we're into the dark blue. And I'm going to do this without using any black first to show you what this would look like if you only bought one color of paint. Okay, because then it's a really cheap, oh, do I like to paint? Or is this something I would hate to do? Foray into the world of painting. And as I finish out this blue, I'll tell you a little story. Who doesn't like a story, right? So I am 55 years old. I will be 56 in just a couple of days. And I have raised and am raising the last few of many children. And my whole life since I was little, even just before I even went to school, I could read music before I could read words. I loved the piano. So I started piano lessons at the ripe old age of 4.5. And pretty much my entire life, that has been my go-to. That's my thing. That was my identity. I was a pianist. I loved other forms of music. I learned many different instruments. Violin was my big second. I loved to sing. Now, see, as I come down, I'm slowly working this in, but I'm also noticing that the paint's drying as I get farther, so I don't really want to go much farther into what I painted already. And now I just want to touch up the edges, which gets a little tricky. So anyway, there is artistic talent that runs in my family. My mother was good at drawing. My grandmother was very good. I had an aunt who later in life became a very good portrait artist. See that? That's this lovely pencil. I mean, this lovely broken handle flaking off in my paint. Oh, phew, that was pretty easy. So I figured in my mind, and I didn't really have a drive to draw. I did a little doodling in school, but mostly because other kids did. I didn't think that I had been gifted with art talent. I focused on my music, and I figured my sister's got the art thing. One, my sister's is very crafty and makes the most wonderful craft things. And my other sister is really good at more of the visual arts like painting. And she took oil lessons growing up and has done some wonderful sketches. So I figured I just had the music gene and they had the art gene. So that was it. Never pursued it. Now in my children, I'm going to touch up this edge a little bit. Just really light strokes to try and blend it in. And I have several daughters that have seemed to gotten the artistic gene. So I thought that just totally bypassed me. Skip to my kids. And then to do something fun with my artistic daughter. For her birthday, we did a paint night thing. I really enjoyed it. It was very challenging. It was a difficult subject, but I really liked it. So for my other daughter's birthday, about a month later, I did another paint night class with both daughters, and I really liked it. So I went to Hobby Lobby, bought basic supplies, brought it home, and I painted this painting. By the way, it will stain your clothes, so wear clothes that you don't mind getting wrecked. It can be washed out if you get a small stain on clothes. You can do a little research on the internet. These can be washed right away. They can be washed later. They don't tend to hold the paint. So right now, what we're waiting for this to dry, I'm just making sure my art supplies are tidy. So as you can see, you don't have to have the black. So before it completely dries, I'm going to take a little bit of the black and add it down here to give it more of the, I'm going to switch to a different brush, get it wet. It's always good to go in with a wet brush if you're going to be doing any kind of blending. I'm going to start down here and just see how well it blends. And while it's still wet on the canvas, I have to remember to do the sides, and I'm not covering my table, so I need to be careful. I'm going to just get where I want it really black, and then I'm going to try and blend it in with that blue a little bit, because that blue is still a little bit wet. Now, if you catch it right away, you can usually get quite a bit of it up. So I'm going to take my clean water. My brush is fairly wet. And I'm going to, I don't know if this is blending or just thinning. I could even grab a little bit of that blue. Again, just a little water. The water thins out the black paint so it's more translucent, which means see-through. Blend it off to the sides a little bit. It spreads a little farther. Kind of following my brush strokes with that blue. And I think I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of water, and do some further blending. I'm not sure that this is going to do what I want, but it's too late for me to back off now. I don't want to do too much strong black because we're going to be doing silhouettes in black. So I guess you do kind of need to have black if you want to do the last part of this painting. But if you wanted to do monochromatic and only use one paint, what I would suggest is to not go full blue at the bottom. And you can use the full blue as your silhouettes, and that would look lovely. But for now, I'm going to assume that you bought a black, and we'll finish this out with a black. Now, you know, who wants to sit watching paint dry, right? You don't want to mess up your lovely paint. So what you can do at this point is take a blow dryer and put the blow dryer onto your painting until it's no longer shiny. Because if you look at this right now, there are some spots that are very shiny and some that are not. So right there it's dry and there it's not, because we've got an extra layer. So you can use a blow dryer to blow dry that, but that sounds awful in a video. So real quick, I'm going to finish my story. So I bought these supplies. I'd made a painting like this, and then I actually was like so excited about it. I'm like, I'm going to teach everybody how to paint. And I had my daughters over and some friends, and I think we had 10 kids painting with me, and we did a paint class. And it was a blast. Everybody's turned out different. It was a lot of fun, and I was hooked. I was hooked so bad. So long story short, between YouTube and my daughter's input and other people's input, since last April, which makes it, let's see, it's November now. Do math, that's 6 months. I've now painted hundreds of paintings. I've sold paintings to photographers. I've sold paintings to strangers. I'm getting on people's highlights on Instagram. My artwork's getting recognized. So the underlying hidden talent that God gave me has come through, and I am in shock. I am in awe, and I want to share what I have. I don't think that artistic talent is 100% what you are given. It's what you use it for. And practice, practice, practice. Try. If it doesn't turn out well, try again. So I'm going to go blow dry this, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back. And while I was away, I was thinking that maybe I might want to mess with the moon a little bit and maybe use this brush. But you can experiment with that if you want, but I'm not going to in this video. But I could have possibly smoothed that out. But since we're going for a surrealistic or impressionistic look, I'm going to leave it alone. So now what we're going to be working on is adding some basic, the original was flowers, but it's winter now. I think we're going to do some trees. So I'm going to just add some trees to the bottom. So it'll give us some nice a way to use this. So you guys can learn how to use that. So you want your brush a little bit wet, and this would work better on a plate, but you can see how they don't stick together. If you rub it around in the paint a little bit, it causes the bristles to come back together. This brush has been through too much, but so it's not wanting to do that. When it was new, it did, but I wasn't very good at taking care of my brushes when I first did it. So the first thing I'm going to do to create an evergreen shadow is to draw a line to create the trunk. Generally speaking, I'm going to want to have this higher on the side, lower in the middle. Don't have to stick with that. But another proportion is thirds. If you notice, the moon is in the top third, and the trees are going to be at the bottom third. This is pleasing to the eye by some studies made. So I'm going to get a little more black because this isn't very much for doing the trees. And another thing that's pleasing the eye is to have an odd number. So it's better to have 3 trees instead of 2, or 5 trees instead of 4 or 6. So just for planning's sake, I'm going to do my trunks first. So if you look at a regular tree, the trunk is going to be wider at the bottom. That's probably a little extreme. And you could totally use a narrow brush, a more pointed brush for this. Lost track of my paper towels. I am so good. Now I just noticed too that this is a little crooked. But we're going to be covering over that later, so I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to do a second one here real lightly. Oh, this is not a good thin brush. That kit probably came with a thinner brush than I have, but I can make the top with the fan brush. But some of my brushes got so bad I use them for other things. Like you can make them all scrunchy and weird and use them to put leaves on a tree. Is probably what I did. So, and trees actually are quite often not very straight. Since I started painting, I actually started looking around and seeing trees are so not straight and perfect. They're all kinds of weirdness. And evergreen trees, they'll have these big gaps in the branches. So just to be a little less smooth, I'm going to make this one a little bit taller, give it a little bit of, so that's 6. So I definitely need to do one more. And that's it for that brush. Okay. So back to the fan brush. I'm going to give these all a little nicer top, because that other brush was so stupidly fat. So going back to my little story, after that paint night, I never really did another class. I just did YouTube videos, and eventually I discovered Instagram, but that was not until I think October. I did post my stuff on Facebook, and my friends and family were very surprised. So I'm just trying to do little branches at the top with just part of the brush, like just a quarter of the brush, being careful not to plant the other part down. And then as I get farther down, when you think about gravity, the short little branches are going to be more vertical, and then as you go down, the branches are going to be heavier, and so they will be more horizontal, and then possibly even hanging down. So I'm just going back and forth and creating random branches. That's the word I'm looking for. So you may wonder why I can't come up with words all the time and I have to hesitate. Well, I can't even remember my kids' names half the time, so I call them by the wrong name all the time. We'll just have to be used to that if you like my channel. But I do say some really funny stuff sometimes when I can't come up with the right words, so maybe you'll have to watch for those. But I also have fibromyalgia, and the more I have that aggravated, the more difficulty I have coming up with words. So I'm just going to be doing the same thing with all these different, so, you know, at the top, they're going more vertical, and as I come down, I start to arch my brush side to side. And there are different trees, and I really want to study this. Maybe you guys know more than I do. There are different types of evergreen trees. So there's these kind of trees that are all perky and sticking up straight, and I think those might be Douglas firs, like Christmas trees that just have individual branches that stick straight out or even up. So I'm going to do more of that with this one right here. It's going to be more of a sparse. But you always have to think about branches that aren't just going side to side. In second grade, we think 2D, but you know, as adults or as we get older, we realize, or we should realize, that there are branches coming towards us. So closer to your trunk of the tree, you're going to have some smaller glimpses of branches that come towards us or away from us. And then there's these other trees that start, they just start with a downward swoop. So I'm going to try that on this one. Being a lefty definitely changes things, so I'm sorry if that throws you off. So right from the start, these branches are swooping down. And on those kind of trees, they tend to swoop down and then go out flat at the end. And another thing that these do when you get to the bigger branches is that the pines actually like hang down and out toward the end, and they might go up a little bit. So there are different pine trees, and I would really like to study those so I can make my paintings more accurate. And again, even on these, you're going to have branches coming towards you, so you could even do like little tiny vertical things to give the illusion of a branch that's going towards you. And these are really great types of trees to put snow on, because, you know, they hang down, they have this almost like a skirt coming from each branch. So there you got the perky one, another perky one. You've got one that's more an average, and then this one is just a hanging downer. I don't know what they're called. And of course, there's also deciduous trees. There, I got a big word. Sorry for clearing my throat. I have a bit of asthma, and it is attacking me this morning. I have too much paint on my brush, so I'm going to do some of the bigger branches down below. You really don't want to come in at the top with a big hunk of paint on your brush. And I'm sorry if my hand covers up what I'm doing. I'll try and be more aware of that, but this is so new to do this painting that I'm not thinking about everything. And my daughter, who also is going to be making YouTube videos for her art channel, and I might give her a nod down the road. She's right-handed, so the camera's set up for a right-handed view. So in the future, maybe I'll try experimenting with camera angles. So only 2 more to go. We're almost there, guys. How's your paintings turning out? I'd love to hear from you guys. Comment below. I'm just starting out, so I know there's not lots of things to just subscribe to, but I'd love for you to subscribe to me, because what I'm going to do in the next few months, as I can, I'm going to retrace my journey through learning both acrylic and watercolor paint, and they are very different. Acrylic was my first paint that I did, and I'm not sure that I would recommend it as a first paint, but I tell you what, I think it's harder than watercolor in some ways, and watercolor is more challenging in some ways. The biggest difference is with acrylic, I put this paint down, and when I come back, it's going to be right where I stuck it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to spread. And so there is that really nice part about you got what you got, and what you put on the canvas is going to stay on the canvas the way it is, the way you put it on when you put it on. Watercolor, you have this whole spreading thing and bleeding and all kinds of stuff. But in the same regard, sometimes you get some really cool art with watercolor that you're like later, I have no idea how I did that, but it's so cool. So there is that element too. All right. I think this painting's done. The only thing not done yet is a signature, but that corner's still a little bit wet. So like and subscribe, and I'll see if I can figure out how to put those in the corners. And I hope to do some regular videoing, but with my life, I still have several children at home and we homeschool. I won't be able to video regularly. Like I can't do a Thursday video upload or a Friday upload. And then I will walk you through what I learned. You don't have to go to college to become an artist. You don't necessarily have to have a drive of loving art your whole life to become an artist. I totally thought I didn't have a stroke of artistic talent in my body. But obviously God had a better idea. And just at the right time in my life, he revealed this to me. And I truly, truly enjoy creating art. And I would love to share what I've learned with you guys, and whoever wants to learn and share and follow in my footsteps. See, there I go again. I can't keep my words straight. That would be an honor. So here's the next time. All done with my moon glow over the evergreens. See, can't even talk. Till next time, your tongue-tied artist. Bye.